Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's August 24th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and I hope it's not noticeable in the background, but they're putting a new roof on my office here, and they've been banging around on there since 7 a.m. this morning, so I've been having to listen to this all day, and anyway, it's been a little distracting for me, and I'm hoping you can't hear all the banging and noise in the background. If you can, I apologize, but not much I can do about it. They'll probably get through with. They're probably going to be 75% done today, and so I got to listen to it for about half a day tomorrow again. So, anyway, let's get to the chart lesson, and I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because I've been listening to this banging all day, and I got to get out of here. It's driving me nuts. So. Um, Really kind of a slow day. There's not a lot of trades here from 10 o'clock till really till 2 o'clock. There's just not, I mean, that's hard to trade. And what we've got here, this is interesting because this is a bigger channel going on here. You can see the darker blue, and here's the midline. And prices were playing that midline, but if you notice, you could draw equal distance lines on each side of that midline right there, and prices were pretty much playing those lines until we finally made a lower high here, and we broke on down and finally tested the lows down here of the really of where the support was all during the day. There's a big gap on today's chart. Notice where this is where we closed on Friday, or this was the 3 o'clock price, and then this was the 3:15 close price here. At least two people sent me their chart, and they were starting their trend channel down here, which that's incorrect because this is really your low of the day. So you would start from here and draw off that first swing low. This channel didn't help you a whole lot. It gave you a couple of trades in here. You can see prices bouncing off of it till finally we broke. We did make a new low, and we actually had a two-legged correction here. This one was very weak and mostly sideways, but there's leg down. I didn't measure it to see how close it was to a measured move, but let's just look at it and see. That's pretty much a measured move, and you see we didn't even get close, but we couldn't because we couldn't get below that support. But notice how we rallied relatively strongly, and that's generally what'll happen if you don't reach a measured move. But back to the gap, you can see I really thought we'd try to fill that gap, but we just couldn't get, we really couldn't, we struggled to get through this level right here, and then once we did, we bounced at the previous support level. So this is somewhat of a little bit of a range going across here. It wasn't real clear. I mean, this is pretty obvious here, but there's also a channel working up. So you're moving up, you get a break, move to a new high, and then you correct again. So there's a couple different ways you could look at this day. There's not a lot of trades no matter how you look at it. It's just a slow kind of day. And really from 7 a.m., which came right in here in these highs, I believe is where 7 a.m. was. Yeah, it's right in here as we're making these highs. Really from that point on, you don't really get a good trade until after 9 o'clock. So I mean, it was a slow morning. I mean, there's a green one in there, and there's a couple more you might argue for, but I think I don't see anything that looks really clear and really obvious. Or once you get past here, you're kind of waiting to see if prices are going to come back here, and finally you get the reversal here. There's a bounce right here, but I don't think I'd take that big. I'd wait on a higher low, and then your higher low is not very good, and so finally you get a reversal here, and you can tell the smart traders waited because notice how it burst off right there. That's because that's when the smart traders start coming in. That's also when the shorts realize, hey, we've been duped, we got to get out, and you can see how it rockets up real quick, and then it just sells off instantly. So not a whole lot going on today, but let's back out where we can see it a little better, and we'll go through the trades. It won't take long, and then I'm going to wrap it up, and maybe tomorrow be a little better. First trade I marked was this one. Again, 7 o'clock came here, and you're just kind of going sideways. This one is tempting, and it would have worked, but it's just not a very good setup. Technically, your failed second entry long is right here, and I don't think you want to go short right there. And then it tries again, and you can see it coming to a wedge right there. And you know one of these is going to win out, but it's really hard to say here. You would expect the downtrend to win out because we're looking, if you see the bigger channel, we're looking for prices to come back down here. Of course, you may not have had that yet. There's really no way. You really were just probably playing this channel and this channel at that point because you didn't have enough price action to get this bigger channel yet. I mean, all you have is this high up here and a low down here, so you don't have anything to work with there. So you really just don't know which one of these is going to win out. And of course, the trend line does, and we're coming down. We finally get a break, and look how congestive it is. There is a first entry, second entry, so there's a failed second entry long, and we are kind of making lower highs and lower lows, but there's some, that's congestive looking too across there. So it's a little bit hard to know what to do. You might take that one based on the trap and looking for prices to make a new low here, and that's what happens. It's not a great setup, but it's there. And then you come back and you make a you just get a first entry, and you come back and you get another first entry and another first entry, and then now you could draw this trend line. It bounces right there. Again, you've had your break and a couple of legs down. You get a higher low here, not a good setup. Finally, you get a reversal, and that's where you want to. That's the first really good trade. And if you catch that one, you get a runner, and you know it may be all you need for today. But we run up and we still don't make a new high yet. But now you got to say, hey, this channel, you know, there's the midline. You can see it coming into play. We push through. We come back and test it. We run down. We come back. We bounce here. And this is a second entry long. That's a little double top right there. You really could call that a triple top. And so I'd just start that as a new count right there. And so one leg down, first entry, second leg down, there's your second entry long right there. Good for a scalp, and then the bottom turns down, and this one is if you had a really good signal bar here, you might have gotten tripped up on this one. The fact that we're made a lower high here leads you to believe that there's a possibility that we may make another leg down like this one. So you got to be real careful. I'd want a little better entry than what I had on my chart, and most of your chart's going to look like mine these days. So you never know that you don't get another measured move down like this. So we actually end up making 2 more legs down. And you don't want to go long, and I don't think you want to go short there either. But it drops on down, it pulls back, and you get a failed second entry long. And you can clearly see that trend line's in play. That one drops on down. You get a break outside, new low, and then we're kind of working higher. You really don't get a good setup here. You might look at that and say, hey, there's a failed second entry short there, but notice this trend line. You get a close outside, new high, and then we're working lower. So there's not really a setup there, and you don't really want to go short there either. There's 2 legs back, but not a very good signal bar. If you had a decent signal bar there, you might consider that one. There's a higher low here, but look, it's right back into all that resistance. And another, and by this time, you can just kind of see prices working sideways here. They're a little later on, as you continue to climb here, you can kind of see there's a little bit of a spike in channel here as well. And this would be the first one I saw that would be worth going long. You can see we pull back to that trend line, get a nice bullish bar. And you got the EMA. It turns out that's a midline, but you don't know that it's not a, it could be possibly be a midline as well. But we bounced there so many times, you could trust that one. So I like that one. You get a higher low here, but now you don't have room to get out. And you come back and you finally get a break here. I believe this to be a two-tier channel, but it could be a spiking channel starting from here, and that's your first two legs break, then you move up. But you can see you finally get a break and you still move to a new high here, but the range is also still in play. But look how the EMA is pointing up here and all the prices are above it, but then all of a sudden we go flat. Look how flat it is right there. Once it's flat like this, forget about second entries, unless if you get a second entry that sets up right at the support or right at the resistance, then you might take it. And there is a little bit of an upward bias today, so you got to be a little more careful going short. There is a second entry short right here, and you might look at that as a double test as well. The problem is you can clearly see this uptrend. We did get a break and a move to a new high, but we could push on up, and we don't quite have a new high there. So that's another one that you could argue to at least be green right there for a short. But again, the bias is up today, so I'm not crazy about taking any shorts even in this. It would have been a nice trade if you took it, but I just don't think it's worth risking. But notice you move down first entry, you move down, and you get a second entry long right off these lows. Again, we're not really looking for second entries in here, but if you get one and it sets up like this, of course you want to pay attention to it. The better trade is to wait for the higher low here. I'll mark that one. And you would think prices would be headed back up here, but they came up short. That midline is really strong in there. Still would have worked for a scalp. Then it turns down, and it just kind of works into 2 o'clock. So this one, you could almost argue for this one to be blue because you do have a trend line. You get a break, a new low. And notice it made a little trap here. It broke lower than it had been previously breaking and almost closes back on its high. That's probably going to trap a few traders. It doesn't really look like it traps a whole lot. It doesn't fool too many people. You just get 2 legs up and it doesn't even get back to the upper side here. My guess is this is probably really down here, and you had a couple of failed breakouts up here. You might even argue for it to be down here before it's over because you do get more touches right there. You just get a couple more breakouts up there. And so by the end of the day, you probably would have had it at least here and maybe here, because that's where you get the most touches using the last closes. So, but that's really what I saw today. Again, not a lot of trades in there, but just watch this EMA. People get so confused and don't know if we're in a range or a trend. But you can see if you back all the way out, look what the EMA is doing. It's kind of like a little roller coaster just going sideways. That is a bigger range. Now there's a trend here. There's a trend here. This is a trend. And there's smaller trends even within those. But this is big enough that we're trending inside of it. But the bigger picture is just flat. And when you get narrowed in here to this thing right here, and you see how flat that EMA is with prices above, below, above, below, above, that's a range. And so don't be trading second entries and failed second entries and all that unless they're at the turning points of the support and resistance. And then you can risk it. Generally, you're almost always better to wait on a lower high off the highs or a higher low off the lows, like right here. This is a higher low. So this one looked like it was going to give you a higher low right here, but we just kept going sideways, and then there's congestion, so you don't want to enter that. But that's what I saw today, and there wasn't a whole lot going on. There's a little more volume today than what we've had some of the previous days, but somebody else also emailed me and said something about scared to trade because we're making all-time highs. Well, that's just a mental block that's going to throw you off. You can't worry about stuff like that. All you can worry about is the price action is never wrong. So if it tells you, if you're reading it properly and it's telling you to go long it, and just because we've had we're near all-time highs. Don't worry about that. Just if the price action shows you a long and gives you a long setup, go long. Because if you start trying to trade based on what you're thinking, some mental bias you got, guess what's going to happen to you? So don't let that happen to you. That's what people do. The price action is never wrong, and it'll show you what it's going to do, and it's just a matter of reading it properly. Usually when we get it wrong, we read something. We might even get everything just right, but we timed it just, not quite right or something. So I know at least one person, I want to say, I'm trying to remember where they entered. Somebody had a setup here, and I think it was right in here. They had an engulfing bar, and they went long. They went long in this stuff here. I think it was right here. But somehow they had an engulfing bar here. It's pretty clear on mine that you just get a first entry and then there's your second entry. But they had an engulfing bar right here that somehow gave them a second entry long. And maybe it was, I'm not sure where it was. Can't remember. But I think it was right in here. But notice on their chart, they had this line way back up here too, like so. So it looks like we're bouncing off of some previous support, but we're not. The support's way on down here. You can see you get way more touches down here. So, and that's perfectly equal distance on the midline, and you can clearly see prices working both sides of that middle line there. It's real obvious, and then there's the highs. It sets up perfectly for another little small range within the bigger range, still using the very midline. Price is what it is. Prices are just working across the midline here, but you can still see the equal distance stuff coming into play with this, with the support and resistance of this playing off that midline. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm not going to drag this out. And again, I hope you don't even hear the banging in the background, but it's pretty loud, and it's about to drive me out of my mind. So hopefully they'll wrap that up pretty quick tomorrow, and I can get back to normal. But I'll back out and give you one more look at the big picture. There it is. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.